what's going on, y'all? T-Bob here.
And Jake as well.
And you're about to watch a little OTB LSU.
We're going to give you all the latest, greatest between LSU football, baseball, women's basketball, softball, and everything in between.
Bottom line, if you want to talk Tigers, keep it locked, subscribe, like it, and we hope you enjoy it.
I want to hit the wide receiver room because, guys, I think there is a lot to be excited about if you're looking at just deepest position groups on the field. Because you have a lot of returners there as well. This time last year, wide receiver was a big question mark. You had Kyron Lacy coming back, but he was kind of that wide receiver 3 behind Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. You didn't have a guy where you were like, hey, can we go out there and count on this guy each and every Saturday? You have some of those guys this year. Obviously, the first name I'm going to mention is Aaron Anderson. He's your leading receiver returning in terms of yards. Like, he had 884 yards, 5 touchdowns a year ago. Xavier Thomas, he caught some nice balls. You actually used him in the backfield a lot in the running game as well, and we know what he can do in special teams. Obviously, Chris Hilton's back. That's a big one. Late in the season, we were waiting all year long for Chris Hilton to get healthy. He did that, and he did it in a big way. If you remember in that Oklahoma game, when Garrett Nussmeier came back from that injury, he hit not one but 2 deep touchdown passes to Chris Hilton Jr. That was the main problem with the offense a year ago, right? You didn't have that bona fide deep threat. Kyle Parker, who is also coming back, kind of became that guy a little bit. I mean, remember the first long pass for a touchdown that Nussmeier hit last year was against UCLA. It was down the right sideline. That was to Kyle Parker, but after that game, he goes down with an injury. He does not return for the remainder of the season. So you're really like, okay, Kyle Parker just got injured. We're waiting for Chris Hilton Jr. to come back from an injury. So you didn't really have a deep threat in this offense. I think that's entirely different this year because, again, Chris Hilton is back. He has the ability to take the top off of defenses. He had another touchdown against Baylor. He was excellent in that game as well. So Hilton's going to be your guy. He's going to get the first crack at being that deep threat receiver. I think Aaron Anderson lives in the slot a lot like he did a year ago. So kind of the 4 guys in terms of experience that you have back from last year's team. Aaron Anderson, Xavier Thomas, Chris Hilton are an obvious 3. And then Kyle Parker showed a little bit of promise early in the year before he got hurt. If he can fully recover, that's another guy that can give you some production. As far as the transfers go, this is where I get excited. You have Nick Anderson coming in from the University of Oklahoma. Look, you have Bauer Sharp, his teammate, coming in as well. Nick Anderson didn't play. I mean, he didn't have a single catch last year. He played in 1 game, didn't have a catch, was injured, had to sit out the entire season. But going back to 2023, that's basically the only year he has played at Oklahoma. Because as a freshman in 2022, he played in 3 games. He didn't have a single catch. He carried the ball twice. That was his stat line for his freshman year. In 2023, with Dylan Gabriel as his quarterback, a guy that can stand back there that's known as a gunslinger, a lot like a Garrett Nussmeier, Nick Anderson showed out in a big way. He had 38 catches, 798 yards, and 10 touchdowns. Like, for reference, that's 21 yards per reception. He's a guy that can beat you deep. He's a guy that can catch the ball across the middle because Nick Anderson is 6'5", 220 pounds. You don't have anybody else in your receiver room like a Nick Anderson. That is a guy that I am keeping an eye on. Look, whether it's spring practice, whether it's summer workouts, whether it's fall practice, Nick Anderson is a guy to keep an eye on. I think he could potentially have a big year. We talk about Trey'Dez Green all the time being such a matchup problem on the outside because he's 6'7", because he's 240 pounds. Look, you have a guy in Nick Anderson that had 21 yards per catch in 2023, double-digit touchdowns in an explosive Oklahoma offense, and you bring that guy in who's 6'5". He's physical, he's fast, he can catch the ball. We know he has a nose for the end zone. I love everything about Nick Anderson. I think he is waiting to be a breakout player on this offense. You also brought in Barian Brown from the University of Kentucky. I mentioned that you didn't really have a deep threat last year until Chris Hilton got healthy. You certainly got him this year because not only is Chris Hilton back and appears to be fully healthy, you have one of the fastest guys in the SEC joining your wide receiver room. Barian Brown has played 3 years of college football, so he's entering his last year of eligibility. As a freshman at Kentucky, 50 catches, 628 yards, 4 touchdowns. Basically the same thing in 2023. 539 yards, 43 catches, 4 touchdowns. Last year, 361, 3 touchdowns. So you get it. He's kind of that wide receiver 2, that wide receiver 3 mold at Kentucky. However, he was catching passes from Devin Leary and Brock Vandagriff. He was not catching passes from a Garrett Nussmeier. This offense is going to be a lot better in the passing game than any offense he played in Kentucky. Look, I'll give Mark Stoops credit for one thing. Mark Stoops always has a solid running game. He always has a physical defense. His passing games have struggled. That has been his Achilles heel at Kentucky, which is why he's lifted Kentucky. He's never gotten them over that hump, though. That program's kind of remained stagnant. A lot of the reason because he's never found that passing game. A guy like Berrien Brown coming in with a quarterback that you know can make all the throws. He has the arm to do it in Garrett Nussmeier. He can make a huge impact in this offense. I just talked about Nick Anderson, 21 yards per catch. We saw what Chris Hilton can do. We saw the kind of connection him and Garrett Nussmeier had, which and a lot of people don't talk about, like the connection they had late in the year. It made it look like Nuss and Hilton had played an entire season together, but they really didn't. I mean, you go look, total number of snaps, it's probably 4 or 5 games total in terms of in-game live reps and what they have done together on the field. That's only going to improve. And then you stick in a Berrien Brown. Berrien Brown set the record for return touchdowns in the SEC. He's going to be one of your returners. We talk about a month or so ago, like LSU all of a sudden has an embarrassment of riches at the returning game. Because for a while now, like you haven't found anybody that can be a returner. Basically what you wanted for the past 3 years was somebody that could just go up there, fair catch the ball, and not drop it. I mean, that's what you had. Whether it was Greg Clayton back there or a Jack Besh back there or Javen Nicholas. I mean, these were guys that weren't exactly burners, weren't exactly going to return the long ones, but you just hoped that they would be sure-handed. You have Xavion Thomas. Jelani Watkins has potential to do it. He redshirted last year. We'll get into him in a minute. And now you bring in Berrien Brown. Aaron Anderson had a return touchdown as well against Oklahoma. Like all of a sudden you go from having no returners to 3 or 4 guys that you feel pretty confident in. There's going to be guys battling for that position. That tells you a lot about the talent in this receiver room because most of those guys are receivers. Okay, so I mentioned the top returners. I mentioned the top transfers. Oh, also Destin Hill coming in as a transfer as well. He's a Louisiana guy. He was at Florida State. Hasn't played a ton because he has been injured basically his entire career at Florida State. However, this was a guy who was a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. He's a guy that everybody wanted. He's 6'2". He's a guy that got a little bit of height on him as well. How much can he do? How healthy is he? We'll see, but we'll see if he can add something. That's another body who, while he hasn't played a ton, he's still been in the college game for a number of years. The newcomers, I'm also very excited about. You have Phillip Wright. You have Teron Francis. I love Teron Francis. He was one of my, I remember when we were sitting here on National Signing Day, T-Bob asked me, hey, pick a guy that not a lot of people are talking about that you think could be a breakout player. My answer was Teron Francis. This guy is over 6 feet tall. He's already 200 pounds. He had an incredible senior season. I mean, he had double-digit touchdowns. He had over 1,000 yards. He's the reason he rose so much in recruiting like he did was because of that senior year. I mean, he was a guy that was committed to LSU early, and then there was a lot of talk of, hey, can LSU actually hold on to this guy? Or is he a guy that, because he's gaining so much attention nationally from other programs, may look elsewhere? He ultimately decided to stay. I think he has potential to be a really, really good football player. So you have Teron Francis, you have Phillip Wright. Both of them have a chance to be good. Look, don't forget about Jelani Watkins. He's a little bit on the smaller side, which is part of the reason why he redshirted this year. I mean, there's rumors that he might be the fastest guy on the entire team. And that's saying a lot when you have Xavion Thomas and Caden Durham on that same team. Also, Kylan Billiot's a guy that redshirted a year ago. LSU fans were excited about him when he signed. Can he break out? Can he give you some quality depth? You have an embarrassment of riches here at the wide receiver position. This is a big reason why in all the preseason Heisman discussions, Garrett Nussmeier is sitting right there in the top 3 because you saw what he did his first year as a starting quarterback and how much more comfortable he got down the stretch. It was his first year with Joe Sloan. It was his first year starting in the SEC, and he had a lot of unproven weapons. This year, when you look at Garrett Nussmeier, he has the same offensive coordinator. He has an entire year starting under his belt, and he's probably got better weapons this year than he had a year ago, even with the loss of Mason Taylor. It's all going to depend on the offensive line. If Brad Davis could get that unit right, Garrett Nussmeier could have a really big season, in large part due to all the talent that you have in this wide receiver room.
Wow, Jake, what incredible takes.
I mean, those guys, they're just the best.
I think so. And if you think so, again, hit the like button, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications when we post every single day here on OTB LSU.